Hey there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace. This is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And we're back with some more stuff. This episode's going to be a little bit more personal. Normally, we cover some spooky topics, some true crime perhaps. But Adam's going to give us a little bit something personal today.
Yeah, for sure. And Robin, she actually comes from a long line of haunted tunnels in Japan.
Fuck you.
So hers is deeply personal. No, like she said, I'm going to be covering a personal topic. And then I think I spoiled yours, but
yeah,
you're covering...
I'm doing some, just a couple haunted tunnels that are in Japan.
Right on, cool. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to name my topic. Probably like Adam's Haunted Tale or something lame like that. But yeah, we'll get to mine second. I think you're going to go first. But before we jump into that, Robin, how you been? What's new?
Nothing. Work. Chilling. Watching F1. I got to wake up in 4 hours so I can watch qualifiers for this week's race. But,
I got to say, Drive to Survive on Netflix is a really, really good series. It's like 5 seasons long, and it covers a season each year of F1. And it's remarkably easy to get into F1 because we were talking about this in the car. There's 20 drivers total. Mm-hmm. There's 10 teams. Each team has 2 drivers. So it's like nothing close to like memorizing rosters on football teams and shit like that.
Yeah, or memorizing all the different players from all the different baseball teams.
Yeah, it's really, really easy. Like just from watching, 2 seasons for me, like season 1, season 4, and then I'm starting season 2 because I'm doing it wildly out of order because I'm watching with Robin and then by myself from the beginning. It's like I know the names of all these drivers and I can jump into like actually watching F1 now, and it's really, really fun. So that's been super fun to like start watching and catch up on. So that's good stuff. Thank you for sharing that with us, Robin.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So check that out. If you guys want to see some good documentaries about like these handsome dudes driving fast cars and just the drama that goes along with like multi-million-dollar corporations trying to, outdo each other. Very Ford versus Ferrari feeling. It's really fun. So yeah. Outside of that, yeah, not a lot going on. Work. Next week, we will not be doing an episode, just FYI. We're going to be traveling back to Las Vegas for some family stuff. We'll be on the road Thursday and Friday, and going to be busy, most of the weekend as well. So we'll not have an episode next week if you're wondering where that one's going to be. Called a Labor Day break for us. But yeah, so we will miss next week. This episode, however, is coming out hopefully on September 2nd. Unless, like, all sorts of technical difficulties pop off between now and the release time.
Yeah.
So, thank you guys for being patient, because it's another Saturday episode. But yeah, there's not a whole lot else going on right now, Our dogs are cute. We're hanging out. Baldur's Gate's awesome. Just started playing Starfield. That seems fun. It's Skyrim in space. So, video games, dogs, work. Yeah, that's about it. So, got anything else you want to toss out there for funsies?
No.
For the peoples?
No.
All right. Then I'll let you take over.
All right, so this week it's gonna be a little bit of a haunting episode, and not because Adam's topic / story that he's gonna share with us is super horrifying or anything. But I think it's kind of scary. Yours is a bit terrifying on a personal level, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's gonna be haunted, baby. Haunted.
I hate you so much.
Like you know how people say like Vegas, baby, Vegas.
You're doing haunted, baby, haunted.
Yeah.
I think you just figured out your new pin design.
That is my topic being the tales of haunted tunnels in Japan. And I've heard of so many different haunted locations in Japan. And these tunnels pop up periodically. And they just all have these strange tales of ghosts or hauntings that happen, which are obviously just up my alley. Not that I would ever actually go to them, but I think, haunted locations are fun. I don't know about you, like covering them is pretty interesting.
I mean, when I was younger, I definitely wanted to go to a haunted location just to like go and see and tell people we went and like get a group together to go. I'm 38 now and I'm just like, no, I would go if we were creating content with it. But as is, like for funsies, nah. That's not my scene anymore.
So the first one of these tunnels is, it's not as detailed as the second one. So I wanted to cover this one first, and it's so much harder than I thought to find something so specific. I mean, a haunted tunnel in Japan
it's a really pretty specific location, specific structure. It's
very niche, but it does periodically pop up on my radar, different ones that people go to, when they're out there, different haunted locations that people visit. The first one is called the Old Isagami Tunnel, which is located near Toyota City.
I wonder what that's named after.
I'm sure the car company is named after the city.
Nah. No way, dog.
And it dates back to 1897. It spans 308 meters, which is long.
Like 900 feet?
Something like that. Is it? Almost. It's like a little over.
Almost 1,000 feet. Yeah, probably just over 1,000 feet.
You'll see a theme with these older tunnels being replaced by newer versions, as tends to happen with infrastructure. Old tunnels close or become outdated, and a new one gets built. The older tunnel is tucked away in the mountains, kind of away from the main highway, and it is eventually kind of abandoned. People don't want to go to this one anymore. It's narrow, so it's kind of hard to drive through, and so new tunnels get built, but this old one is still accessible by car.
When you like deprecate a tunnel, when you stop using it and shut it down, do you like blow it up, or do you just leave it there to eventually collapse on its own?
I think it depends. I think if it becomes really dangerous, you'd have to like fill it up or blow it up or whatever. And I think in some cases people just leave it if it's not going to fall apart or something like that, maybe just seal up the ends or something.
What's kind of funny is, like, I don't know if you remember this movie called Daybreak with Sylvester Stallone from like the late 90s. It's about like I can't remember which tunnel in New York. I think it might be the Holland Tunnel where it like connects like the island. But it's just about like a tanker that gets into an accident in the tunnel and it causes a big explosion, which causes a collapse, which is eventually going to cause the tunnel itself to just like implode, basically, with the river just coming down on it, and someone has to go in and get the people out, and that's what Sylvester Stallone does.
Okay, but why is it called Daybreak? Is it like vampires?
So you're trying to make it to the surface because you're trapped in a tunnel underneath a river of water.
Oh, okay.
So it's a typical cheesy action movie that's like, man versus the elements while trying to save these people. It's kind of funny though, because as an adult, I came across it I think like 2 or 3 months ago on TV. And I was like, man, the logistics of building a new tunnel while trying to get rid of the old tunnel, like they'd have to relocate the tunnel and they'd have to like avoid the site where this all happened. And I just remember thinking through like, what would they even do to like repair the tunnel or just make a new one? So it's funny that you're covering this because that thought process went through my brain like 60 days ago. And I just like let it go. I'm like, this will never fucking happen anyways, whatever.
Okay. During the construction of the tunnel, workers died in accidents, supposedly, which is also a theme with these tunnels. That's what happens with construction, right? Apparently, if you're haunted, that means people died when they were making you. Though you'd think that would mean that there would be some construction worker ghosts. There actually seem to be reports of women and children that kind of inhabit these tunnels. And there aren't a lot of criminal reports that could be the reason behind the paranormal activity for this tunnel. Like, there isn't reports of crime or murder or things like that would cause ghosts. But people really feel uneasy when they're in this old tunnel, and they just feel really uncomfortable. People hear voices, or they get hit with like nausea as they're walking through.
Oh shit.
Or going through, and the lights in the tunnel will flicker for no reason.
I mean, humans have been around for a long time. It's possible they tunneled through an area that has some history that people just forgot about.
Maybe.
It could just be an area that had something happen, or there was something buried there. But yeah, like history just forgot about it, and because they dug through it, no one exactly knows why these things are happening there. Like the normal indicators where there was a murder there was something that we know about that's documented. It just could be too old to know.
Yeah, you never know. There are reports of children's handwriting that appears on the walls of the tunnel or on like the windows of cars as they drive through.
That's so creepy.
Which is super creepy. Just ghost children doing things just freaks me out. There is a legend from truck drivers that claims that they've seen a woman on like walking alongside the road, and she's often seen wearing a white kimono, and when the drivers offer her a lift, she'll get in, and then when they reach the other side of the tunnel, she'll disappear from the passenger seat.
Wow.
And supposedly
the hitchhiker ghosts legend that you've heard a lot about.
And it just happens to be white. I'm sure that has a part to play in it, right? How this hitchhiker ghost is just like a common story that gets told. The woman in white story, it's just instead of a white dress, this one's a white kimono, But She is supposedly the ghost of a woman who died in the 1959 Issei Bay typhoon, along with her 2 children. And these children are also supposedly seen wandering these tunnels as well. I saw somewhere that people actually reported seeing the mother, quote unquote, climbing the walls of the tunnel, which is absolutely horrifying. I just imagine it like something out of a horror movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The tunnel was actually used as part of a track for rallying. So it's still functional. People still use it. It's just...
Can you imagine a fucking
rally cart?
Racing event, a rally racing event where they're like, and partway through, you're going to have to go through a haunted fucking tunnel. That's just like, it's a Mario Kart track at that point.
Yeah, and I just can't even imagine because how narrow this tunnel is. Some people were saying you can only fit 1 car through at a time. Some people say you just have to be driving really carefully through that.
I hate tunnels and bridges that you have to do 1 car at a time.
But yeah, I mean, locals do report how dim and narrow this tunnel is and how driving through, you just kind of get this oppressive feeling and that how they accentuate, is that the word I'm looking for? They just tell you, like, you really need to be paying attention when you're driving and be really safe, especially if you're trying to pass someone in the tunnel. Like, you know, going in both directions.
Best advice is to not pass someone in a tunnel in that case.
Some people are just too scared to even go. And even though they tell themselves, like, I'm going to go this time, they just make a U-turn and go back around and find a different way around because it's just too scary for them to want to even go through. So I wouldn't want to go if locals are like, nah, you know?
It's crazy how that stuff happens too. Cause like I know some folks who like thought specific roads back home like were cursed. And I think it was more like related to their family. Like, oh, like my dad crashed on this road. My uncle crashed on this road. Mm-hmm. And they would make like active attempts to take roads that weren't that one.
Yeah.
Which would cause massive detours and like take a while to get somewhere. But like for a giant group of people to do this, despite the fact that they don't have like a record of why that's happening, creepy shit must have happened in there enough, or enough people have talked about creepy shit happening in there.
Right.
Where they're like, you know what? Best not.
I think it you know, the fact that it's really dark and old plays into that because just even though there might not be a lot of strange history about it, it's existed for so long and it's hidden away and it's just, you know, haunting.
I wish you guys could see her face when she says haunting that way. It looks absurd. However you picture someone saying haunting in your mind's eye, it's probably pretty accurate.
Anyway, so the next of these tunnels I'm going to share is the Old Inunaki Tunnel. And the name translates to dog cry or dog howl tunnel. And it's located in the Inunaki mountain region of Fukuoka, Japan. And it's said to be one of, if not the most haunted tunnel in Japan. And
still, again, very, very specific type of structure and very specific place.
Yeah.
So it's like top 2.
It's in a pretty remote location. It's been said that people have been murdered in and around the tunnel. Local legends tell of the deaths beginning in the 1940s at initial construction, similar to that first tunnel. The story is that during construction of the tunnel, many workers died due to accidents. And, you know, death during construction isn't surprising to me. It happens. I mean, there were people that died during the construction of the Hoover Dam. Granted, that is on a much larger scale than this particular tunnel, but accidents, they happen all the time.
Right.
I mean, people that are doing, you know, freeway changes, freeway expansions, highway expansions, things like that, they can die by getting crushed by equipment. It happens.
Someone out there is like going to be on a project soon and they're listening to this. They're like, why would you say that, Robin?
I mean, it happens.
Be careful out there, folks.
But you know, think about it being the 1940s, right? When it's first getting constructed, it's much less safe in construction zones. They don't have all the regulations. Like, they don't have OSHA. That doesn't exist yet. So human error, it's believable. What's creepier about the deaths is that supposedly their bodies are buried within the walls of the tunnel. Supposedly, right? That's like the legend.
Yeah, again, another really common thing that we hear when it comes to like haunted bodies in a construction site. Like they just left them where they passed away and just bricked over them or put concrete on top of them. Something horrible like that.
Yeah, if it's true, that is like instant grudge curse type thing to do. But knowing how organized Japan is as a country, it's really hard to believe that they would just block bodies in cement. You know, I don't think that they would do something like that.
You would hope not.
If they did, though, those spirits would, of course, not be at rest and would haunt everything around them, which, if this place is truly indeed haunted, would make sense. The tunnel was open to traffic in 1949 and was in service until a new tunnel was constructed nearby between 1974 and 1975. Understandably, with a new tunnel nearby, this old one wasn't needed anymore. And the old tunnel was sealed with like a concrete block wall. And they did it because it was kind of like this necessity to prevent trespassers, because they thought like this tunnel's just unsafe. People should not go in there. But it obviously doesn't stop people from going in there.
It just wouldn't stop kids or unruly hooligans that decide they want to go do something stupid.
It's like covered in graffiti and stuff now.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, that's what people do. Treat things like shit. There are legends of it having been testing grounds during World War II for like bio and chemical weapons. So that kind of has legend to it too. One of the more notable legends surrounding the tunnel is a murder that occurred on December 7th, 1988.
Murder.
Yep. 5 boys tried to steal a car, and they tried to steal it from this guy, 20-year-old guy, but were unsuccessful in doing so. So what they did was they decided to kidnap him and torture him instead.
If you can get away with kidnapping, couldn't you just take the fucking car?
Maybe they couldn't overpower him or something. I don't know.
It sounds like they overpowered him if they kidnapped him. Could they just not unlock the car? And he's like, keys are locked in it, man. You can't take it. And they're like, now we're going to murder you.
I don't know how it actually happened. But they murdered him by burning him alive with gasoline.
Jesus Christ.
So he supposedly screamed as he was on fire and ran to the end of the tunnel before he collapsed at that end. And some say there's still evidence of his blood and burned clothes that can still be seen on the guardrails down there. His body had actually been found the next day. So it's not like he sat there for a while, you know. Other deaths surrounding the tunnel include the discovery of a body in 2000 that had been left in a nearby dam. So multiple bodies, multiple spirits. I wouldn't say that they're the reason why, you know, things are so haunted. I think there's more to it than just those. But who knows? I'm not a ghost specialist.
You're not a ghostologist. It would really suck to die in such a horrific way where you were burned alive and you like ran down a tunnel like while you were burning. And then that was like the place you had to haunt after that.
Yeah. Like
an abandoned tunnel that no one ever comes to. You're like, well, this fucking sucks. Like, this is going to be boring afterlife.
Yeah. There are these rumors of a haunted Inunaki village that kind of goes along with this a little bit. It does exist, supposedly, beyond the tunnel itself. But the rumors about this particular village started circulating online around 1999. And that's quite a long time ago, but at the same time, not that long ago. I say that because I don't want to feel old. 1999. I was 10.
4 years ago.
I was 10. There are people that we know that we hang out with that weren't even born yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my God. But there was a real Inunaki village that existed between 1691 and 1889, but it isn't connected with this legend. It's totally different. So the exact location of this version of said village is supposedly unknown. But like this, it's a story, right? So it goes that it's a village that exists that doesn't go by any rules of modern day Japan. And the legend tells of a small village that exists near this tunnel. So the original story follows a young couple sometime in the early 1970s that has their car break down. And they leave their car in search of help and come across a passage just off the side of the road. They follow this passage and it comes to a seemingly abandoned village. At the entrance of the village, there's a sign that states the Constitution of Japan does not apply beyond this point.
Red flag. Turn around.
All the houses are dark and dilapidated, and they don't hear any sounds at all. It's like dead silence. A creepy old man appears on the porch of one of these buildings, he shouts like, "Welcome to blah, blah, blah village," or whatever, and then bounds at them quickly. And he approaches them and murders them with a sickle.
Fuck.
And if you guys don't know what a sickle is, it's like a big hooked knife type thing that farmers use, right? To
It's like a half crescent blade.
Yeah. Have you seen people freaking like cut wheat or whatever with those things?
Not in person.
Like
I mean, I know I'm from the sticks, but I've never seen someone use
videos
that.
of it. I've watched videos of people using it, and it is insane.
Yeah, I've seen people use
how quickly
videos
they just
sure.
cut through huge areas of stuff. But that's how they get murdered. They get murdered with this.
If Robin
weapon.
sounds distracted, it's because our dogs just started fighting in the background behind us.
But the story continues that as the woman is getting attacked, she finally notices that behind and between these buildings, there are bodies like laying around all over. So everything that was in this village must have been killed by this sickle-wielding man. And legend goes, that their car was just left on the side of the road next to this cursed path. And of course, there's no car that sits there, right? Today, there's no cars that are just stuck on the side of the road.
Even if the story was true, like just applying a little bit of reality to it, at some point the car would have been impounded and towed.
It's just a nice, scary story, right? That people tell about a haunted place.
But is there like a specific location where this haunted village is supposedly nearby where you can go find it?
It's supposed to be like a path off the right side, like past this tunnel.
So you're like only going to find this if you're like going at night and your car breaks down and you're desperate to find help? Okay, cool.
Another story tells of a phone booth near the bridge, like Inunaki Bridge, that gets a call from the village every night. Anyone who answers the phone will be cursed and transported to this village. And there you lose all control over your own body and mind until you die. So that one's weird.
That sounds pretty awful. Yeah.
There are also, there are reports of ghostly apparitions, the feeling of being watched at this tunnel. Something that would definitely freak me out is hearing strange noises in the night, like screams or children crying.
Air horns.
My kryptonite definitely is the children thing.
Yeah.
Just the sounds of disembodied children freaks me out.
I think you'd get angry if you were sleeping and like you heard a disembodied.
There are reports of voices that call you to follow them into the tunnel, which to me is horrifying. Some say that their cars break down near the tunnel or their various communication devices stop working, so probably their cell phone or things like that. Then there are those that say they've found finger and handprints on the windshield after passing through the tunnel. There's definitely a lot of legends out there. People like, how they pour like flour or whatever on their cars
to see if there's fingerprints
and the handprints that push them through or something like that. That gave me that type of vibe. But needless to say, many avoid the area if they can help it. People don't want to go here. And that's more so than the first tunnel that I told you about. Locals are just like, no one wants to go there.
Fuck yeah.
Like, people do go there. Teenagers, tourists, things like that.
Idiots.
They go there and they hang out because it's like this haunted location and people want to experience that, right? But the locals are like, we don't want to go there. And now all these people are going there and leaving trash and crap and stuff like that.
So they have to go to the haunted place to clean it now.
So yeah, so if you guys are going to these places, don't be a dick. Don't leave your trash. Like, clean up after yourself. Like, come on. But the legends of this particular tunnel are so well known that it is the inspiration behind Junji Ito's story, The Story of the Mysterious Tunnel.
Yes, that story we're all familiar with. I've never heard of it until now.
He is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, name in horror manga. Like,
okay.
If you saw like all of his art, you would know that's a Junji Ito.
Okay.
Like, it's just
like, I get what you're saying now, because like I can recognize Akira Toriyama, the guy that made Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super. Like, his art style is very distinct. If you didn't know it, you wouldn't know the difference. But like, just like seeing a trailer for a video game, I'm like, what is Toriyama doing making a video game? Like, instantly I knew. So yeah, I understand what you're saying now.
It was also the setting for a Japanese horror movie called Howling Village in 2019. A horror game named Inunaki Tunnel, also released in 2019. It's on Steam. But all of this has kind of turned it into a tourist destination because it's, ooh, super haunted tunnel. Let's
Right.
all go there. But yeah, so I mean, people keep going there because they want to get scared, but stop being trashy.
Yeah. That's so funny that you put it that way too. When I was a kid, like I used to litter, and I remember my mom driving with me one time, like I was like 16 or 17. I had been driving for maybe a year, and I threw something out the window, and she's like, "Why'd you do that?" I was like, "I don't know.
Someone
why
has
not?"
to clean it up.
She's like, "Just, you're throwing trash
Yeah.
out into someone's yard. Like it's very trashy to do. It's just a very shitty thing to do for no reason." And I remember thinking, like, I don't want to be trashy. Like when she said that to me, I was like, fuck, she's right. And I think about that every time I have a piece of garbage that I could just drop on the ground anywhere. I'm just like, nope, put it in your pocket, throw it away when you get to a trash can. It's like, if I were a ghost and I haunted a tunnel and you walk by it and you drop litter on the ground, I'd be like, that's the dude that dies. Like I'm taking him to hell.
In Japan too, it's a lot different than here in America. In America, everywhere has a trash can. In Disney, every freaking 10 feet or something, there's a trash can, or 10 steps. I don't know. There's a science to it, but there's always a trash can somewhere. No, like
I'm mired in trashology.
No, Walt Disney was like, it takes an average of this many steps for someone to just chuck their trash on the ground. So we're gonna put a trash can at that point, so people aren't going to be throwing it on the ground. There's a trash can.
There's always a trash can nearby.
But in Japan, there's not really a lot of trash cans everywhere. So you end up carrying a lot of your own trash, unless you're a piece of crap and then throw your trash on the ground. But so, I mean, you have to remember, like anything that you buy, your drinks, your cans, whatever, you're going to be holding on to that like all day. So
yeah, when we would get stuff on the subway, I remember you'd be like, drink it now. Like, chug it now and throw it away right there.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to carry that empty bottle everywhere we go. And I'm like, okay. Like, Roger, can do.
So, but yeah, haunted tunnels.
It's pretty good.
Don't want to go.
You like undersold that category or that topic. Like, it wasn't going to be that good. And I think you actually did a really good job.
Aw, thanks, babe.
So, good job. All right. So, before we move into my stupid story, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And we are back.
I know you say your story is stupid. Is your story stupid because it's personal or?
Yeah. Duh. So anyways, this week I decided that I wanted to cover a topic that I have been actively avoiding for pretty much my whole life. I've only ever put these events I'm about to talk about together in this order to make sense of it one time in my entire life. And that was when Robin and I were driving to California from Las Vegas. It was at night. I can't remember exactly what we were going out there for. I think we were going out there for a weekend.
We've gone there too many times.
Yeah, we made that drive a lot. It's very rare we make that drive at night. But it was really, really dark, and we were listening to the Tripod, which is the Try Guys Tripod. And I can't remember exactly what they were talking about, but I think it was Eugene talking about some of the stuff like with his like parents and his mom in particular, and how she has like a psychic who really thought Eugene was going to succeed when he was not doing well in his life. And then like his mom like 100% believed that he was going to be, rich and famous because her psychic was like, it's going to happen. And how like it's just such a weird thing. And Eugene always seems like such a pragmatist and such like a realist in some ways. And then when you start, listening to him talk about certain things.
Well, you don't remember that whole episode about the Greys where he sees people that are going to get sick or die or something like that?
Yeah, and then there's like these other things to his life where despite the fact that he's a very like serious person and he does seem very skeptical about a lot of things, there's things where like if it breaks past a certain like degree of skepticism for Eugene, he does believe in certain things that are very like supernatural. And I remember hearing something he said, and it made a lot of these things, like I talk about recovered memory a lot on the show, and a lot of things like just came rushing back to me during that drive. And
Trauma.
I went through it. I like paused the episode. I was like, hey, I want to talk to you about something, and don't freak out. I just want to go through this in my head, and I just want to talk it out loud, and then just let me know what you're thinking as we're going through. She's like, okay. And I just went through this whole thing. And then like when we were done, I was like, okay, cool. I feel better. And I was just like, all right, I'm going to listen to Eugene again. And then I put the tripod back on. That's the only time that this has ever happened. And it's kind of funny because I have thought about doing this as a topic. I haven't sat down and thought about it start to finish again, but I've thought about like, I should tell this story on the show.
Because it's scary.
Because it's, my story. And I've told my dad's story, and my mom has come on and told her story. We brought all our friends on and exploited them for episodes.
I've definitely had my family on, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And we have people email us every week, and, they send us stuff that's their deeply personal stories. And I haven't shared mine yet, just because it's a bit weird and it hits really close to home in certain ways, just because of like the progression I'm going to go through. I've always thought, and really up until like today, I've thought when I cover this topic, I want it to be our last episode.
What?
Like, I want that to be the one I end on where I'm like, here you go, guys. Here's my shit.
You're not, but no.
And
we're not, this is not how we're saying this is
No.
ending, okay?
I thought about it, and today I thought, like, it's really unfair for me to ask people to share their, like, deepest, darkest secrets. And then when I finally drop my personal story, to just cut off, like, all types of communication. Like, yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. We're not responding to any of our socials or our email anymore. Bye. So I figured, like, I'm going to tell my story, and I'm not going to do it, for a few reasons. One is because, like, I don't know when or if we're going to stop doing Scaryish. Like, if we can keep finding topics, we're probably just going to keep on going. And now that people are a lot more understanding of us, like, needing to take a break every now and then or just missing an episode here and there, It's a lot easier to do.
Had dental work this morning, and
it was so funny, guys.
You would not have wanted to hear that.
We went to Target, and we were walking around, and we had Starbucks, and I looked at her, and I thought she had scratched her face because she couldn't feel it, and I thought she had
dragon drink.
I thought she had a big purple scratch mark on her, like, lip, like, from her lip, like, down her chin. I was like, oh my God, she scratched herself really bad. And I went over, I was like, are you okay? And I got close enough, and as soon as I got close enough, I was like, oh, she dribbled out of her mouth and didn't realize it, and it dried, and it's just, she looked ridiculous.
Dude. Oh my God. I was like, you let me walk around Target looking like this? I look like a freaking crazy person.
So the first time I saw it, I let her know. But imagine what comes with, like, numb lips, numb mouth, like the voice that would have come out during this episode. It would have,
I couldn't even feel my nose.
It would have been absurd, 100%. But anyways, yeah, I thought, like, hey, let's go ahead and cover this topic now so people can hear it. People can, respond to it. It might, strike a chord with someone out there who wants to share their story because they hear it. Plus, like, I just don't really know when a better point is going to be for me to share this. Like, I just felt comfortable doing it. Funny enough, I felt comfortable doing this yesterday. Yesterday when I wrote this, I was like, this is the day. Like, I'm telling this fucking story. And then I was like, oh fuck, we have to delay the episode. So tonight I was like going through all of it again, like, oh my God, do I really want to share this story? So this one's going to be different. And it's going to be different in one major way for me. So I typically have a script. Like, I will write out bullet points of everything that I want to say. And I might stick to it. It might just wind up being like a loose guide, or I might read some bullet points like word for word. And that's usually what my script looks like. And I do have my intro written, and I've already, like, veered wildly off topic for my intro. But rather than script out the rest of this when I get past the intro, once I announce the name of the episode, that's usually when, like, my script starts. I don't have that. I have bullet points that are just like a word or two reminding me where I want to start and the event I want to talk about and the progression it's going to take. I don't have things that I want to, like, read off of a page. I want to have it be more freestyle. That way, in case I remember something or, it just comes into my brain naturally. It's a little bit more, I guess, natural for me to do. And it's kind of funny because when I wrote this intro, I put, as I'm thinking through this, I'm sort of beginning to realize that parts of this may, not definitely, but may be difficult for me to cover. And when I wrote this, I definitely cried at one point.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I was just like, oh, God damn it. And I put this caveat in here. Robin likes to make fun of me anytime I get choked up on anything. So fair warning that could come out of the blue. If it does, I'm considering just putting in, like, the technical difficulties song in the background. Not really. But I'm going to try and get through this relatively easily. It might go really fast. This intro is already, like, the longest intro I've ever done, so probably not. But I'm going to just go ahead and just tell this thing, and then we'll see where it winds up. And I think I'm going to call this episode Adam's Haunting Tale or something.
Okay, I just skimmed forward. I know why you're going to cry.
Yeah, I figured you would.
Okay.
Robin lies through her fucking teeth when she says she doesn't read my scripts. I watch her stare at the screen and watch her eyes dart as she reads it. She'll laugh sometimes in episodes before my jokes because she just read the joke that's about to happen. It's so fucking annoying. But this one's going to be a little bit different. So Adam's haunting tale. So I'll start this by saying I'm going to do this chronologically. And that's why I say, like, this is the second time I've ever done this, because I do remember all of these events. I'm fine. Like, my eye has a sty on it. I'm okay. But I've never really gone through it chronologically and put these all together to really, like, track the sort of, I wouldn't say trauma, but, like, just really weird events that have, like, followed me my whole life. I've remembered them in pieces here and there, and I think that car ride was the first time I'm, like, drawing a line to connect those dots. I'm like, yeah, this is fucking creepy. So that's what I'm going to recreate. So I'm going to start at being a child. And when I was a kid, the house that I remember growing up in is in Valparaiso, Indiana. This started before we were there at a house in, I think, Portage, Indiana, when I was really young. So, like, younger than 7 years old. I would say this probably started, like, more like 3 or 4. These are actually some of my, like, earliest memories I can still dredge up.
I know you still have like nightmares and stuff in your old houses.
The nightmares I have nowadays is from the house in Valparaiso. When this started, we were not in that house yet.
Okay.
So when I was a kid, I used to be very creative, and I don't know if I'm still that, but I would daydream a lot. Like, by creative, I mean, like, I had a really active mind. I wasn't that kid that was
you're a liar.
I wasn't a liar. No, I was just like, I would love to write stories. I would love to draw crazy things, like that sort of thing. And, you know, I would daydream. Like, if we were standing there talking to someone, like, I remember talking to my soccer coach one time. And this is how you know it's really, really a long time ago, because I played soccer when I was like 4 or 5. And my parents and him were talking, and they were talking about me. And I was bored. So I just started, like, thinking of other shit. And I didn't realize they were talking to me at one point. And I remember hearing my mom say, talking to him is like talking to a brick wall. And that, like, snapped me out of it. I was like, oh, fuck, she meant me. I was like, I didn't know how to say it, but I was just like, I have no idea what you guys have been talking about for like the last 10 minutes, because I was just fucking standing there daydreaming.
And it wasn't that you had ADD or something like that?
I mean, it could have been. I mean, back then it was just called being stupid, and, like, the diagnosis was you got, you know, told you're stupid and you got hit was the treatment. So I used to, you know, have a very active mind, which made falling asleep very hard for me. But it wasn't, like, in a bad way. I wasn't upset that I was in bed. I was actually kind of happy because I could just lay there and just, like, let my mind sort of go wild.
That is okay.
You want to put words to that shitty thought, asshole?
You know, like, you know how sometimes you have, like, bedtime thoughts where you shouldn't be left to your own thoughts when you're trying to go to sleep, because you just think about all the horrible things in your life. And, well, like,
I'm like 4 or 5, so I don't really have that. And I literally put here, I had existential thoughts without the dread. So it wasn't just sitting there, like, imagining stories and shit. When I used to lay down in bed, I used to think about, like, who I am. Like, I am a person. Like, when you see those videos where they show, like, a place and they zoom out and you see, like, the universe, then, like, more and more and more, and it keeps zooming out. I used to, like, have those thoughts in my head as a little kid. And one of the things I remember doing is I used to think about, like, what makes me different from this person? And I don't know why I used to fixate on this, but, like, I remember learning about Abraham Lincoln when I was a kid. Like, Abraham Lincoln was this guy, and, you know, he was the president, and he died, and he freed the slaves, and blah, 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 blah. And I just remember thinking as a kid, like, wow, he was great, because that was so long ago, and people still talk about him, and people still really like him. And I remember thinking about, like, you know, I'm just a little kid. I'm a little kid in this bed, and Abraham Lincoln was this guy who was super tall, and he was super important, and, like, everyone remembers him. And, like, just thinking about those two things.
Super tall has to be a qualifier.
He was.
Okay.
But thinking about those two things and, like, the vast difference between me and him, like, made me just realize, like, the world is huge. Like, the world to me, as a kid, thinking these things before I went to sleep, was, like, infinite. And there was this thing I would say to myself, and I didn't remember this. I swear to God, I didn't remember this for, like, 30 years. Until we were in that car ride. But when I used to lay there in bed and think about these things, the phrase I used to repeat to myself was, why am I me? And even saying that, that's like the first time, or maybe the second time in 30 years I've said that out loud.
Really?
Yeah, but I used to think, why am I me? In a very existential way. Like, I was coming to terms with the fact that I am a sentient creature that can think and feel. And, you know, I was a little kid thinking, like, why am I me? Like, why do I have this? You know, why doesn't a dog have this thought? Or why doesn't an ant have this thought? And I used to think that thought. and I would like repeat it to myself, and I would think about like the vastness of the world and like the universe when I was laying there. And I'm like fucking 4 or 5 years old doing this shit. And I didn't realize it until I was in college. But essentially what I was doing as a kid, as a super, super young kid, was meditating.
I can see that. Yeah, you're in the dark. You're just
laying there,
head.
completely sensory deprivation, like on my top bunk, very dark, just meditating, thinking about like, why am I me? What's my place in the universe? And like, I would do this thing where if I thought it enough, and I very distinctly remember this, if I thought this enough, why am I me? I don't want anyone to do this, by the way, and I'll tell you why later. But I would get this head rush. Like if I kept going, I would get a head rush that I can tell you right now is like, it's nothing like anything I've ever had before. Like, I mean, I've done stupid stuff like the choking game where you like, you put you put your head between your legs, you take 20 deep breaths and you sit up and you like pinch your neck.
What?
And like you pass out. But when you wake up, you have this head rush.
Wait, you did it to yourself?
Yeah, in like high school, we used to do this stupid shit to ourselves. Or like anytime I've ever gotten drunk, or anytime I like ever smoked a cigarette, or like done any drug, like the rush people get. It's funny thinking about it because like chasing that first feeling is a lot of the times what you hear an addict does because they're trying to feel that way again.
Yeah.
Anything I've ever done has never compared to that like weird sense of euphoria I would get where I would say it enough where I just felt like it's not why am I me? It's like I'm part of everything. It was just this like
You're
really
one with the force.
No, it's like this really peaceful moment of like everything's connected. And I could feel it. I was like, I feel connected to things. And I felt like grateful and happy and like relaxed. And I'd go to sleep. Once I felt like that, I would go to sleep. And I would do this every night.
For how long?
A long time. I don't remember
like
how
years?
long this was. Like probably at least a year. And like, I just remember like being so excited to go to bed to do this. And then I started noticing that once I hit my head rush, and that was the other thing, I'd have a million thoughts running through my head, and I'd hit my head rush, and everything would go silent. Just like a wave of calm would wash over me, and I wouldn't be thinking anything. And then I'd lay my head down and I'd go to sleep. And so I'd put myself into that space before I'd sleep, and then I started to notice, this is going to be hard. I just realized like, oh fuck, this is going to be hard. So one thing before I continue, don't judge me until you get to the end of this, because I know there's a lot of things that I've covered in the past that I've been very skeptical on, so I ask you guys to not judge me until I'm done with this. Once I was like silent and I'd lay my head down and go to sleep, I'd hear things. Like I would straight up hear people talking. Like I would lay my head there.
Head.
It wasn't in my head. Like
ghosts talking around
I
you.
thought I heard people around me, like not standing near me, like floating around me because I was on the top bunk talking, and they weren't talking to me. It wasn't like, hey kid, get up. Like I thought I heard people either doing like monologues where they're like talking to themselves about their lives, like they're frustrated or like they're alone.
Is it, you know how people do like astral projection or whatever where they get like...
So someone told me when I was younger, not this young, I'd say like teenager level, that they saw like a gift in me and that I could astral project at some family party, and they sat me down and talked to me about it. I remember sitting there being like, she needs to get the fuck away from me.
Oh my God.
And you guys will understand why the further I go. So it started off with me like hearing this stuff, and then I realized that some of the things, like I started to focus on listening. Like rather than laying there and trying to go to sleep, I tried to make out what was being said. And some things I couldn't understand. Like I think it might have been like...
a different language maybe?
Yeah, I think it was just straight up, it was like a different language that I couldn't understand, or what my head... If this was all just me being a kid, you know, it was like gibberish in my head of what I thought a different language sounded like. But to this day, I don't think that was the case. And then like, I would hear more often than not people being mad.
Like angry.
And in some cases, I'd hear people arguing with other people. And then in some cases, like instead of the monologue style thing, it would be people like ranting about like how mad they were. And I would lay there and listen. And I told myself like, don't say anything. Like if there's someone there, don't let them know you're listening because they're going to be upset. Because I'm a kid. And I'm just like, you know, eavesdropping is not okay. Like I could get in trouble for this. And I'm not sure what's happening, but that was the thing I would do before sleep. The more I did it, the more shit I started to hear.
It just seems like a bad idea.
Yeah. So this is why a lot of times I'm like, don't do that. Like, why are you playing with that? Don't do that. But I started having nightmares at this time. This is when I started having my recurring nightmares, was when I started doing this. And I started hearing more and more shit. And this is when I started seeing creepy shit out of the corners of my eyes. Or like...
You don't now,
creepy
though.
faces in mirrors. No, I don't. And I remember thinking, like, it's because I'm a kid. And, like, when you're a kid and you're telling yourself it's because you're a kid, you're scaring yourself because you're a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot tell you how many times I slept in my brother's bunk or my parents' room because I was so fucking scared. And I felt foggy. There are certain time periods, I should say time periods, of me being a kid I don't remember well.
Like the whole years. Like it was just like a weird...
Like, I remember high points or low points, like super low points. But I like, there's certain parts of my childhood that I just honestly don't remember.
I mean, I think that's a normal part of being a kid, though. Like, I don't remember a lot of the things that I did when I was in elementary school or even middle school. I just think that's, you know...
Well, here's the thing. Like, around the time I was 7, I basically remember everything since I was 7. Like, I can recall with very, very good accuracy events that happened to me in school from being like 7 and on. And that's when we moved from the house I did this shit in. So I felt groggy. I felt foggy. I think foggy is the best way I could ever put it. And I just felt like off. And I was like there. I was present, but it was always just like I was kind of fighting to be present. And this is why I love the movie Constantine. Because when he realizes, like, obviously it's a Hollywood version of like, you know, something like this. But when he realizes there's something wrong, like, it terrifies him. It's not like, this is awesome, I'm going to make money doing this, I'm going to have a TV show. It's like, it's fucking horrifying.
I mean, but in Constantine, he tries to kill himself.
I wasn't like that.
You know what I mean? I'm like...
Not him, but like, if you think about her, the one who's the detective, like, she had things happen to her as a kid, and she willfully chose to turn it off, you know? Like, she shut herself off from it.
Right.
And there's a point when I was a kid where I was so fucking sick of having nightmares all the time. And if I wasn't having that recurring nightmare, I was having night terrors where I'd wake up screaming. That I would stop. I told myself, like, I have to stop.
So your mom would come into the room?
Yeah.
Like
if you talk to my mom, when my mom hears this episode, it's going to freak her the fuck out. Like, guarantee. I've never talked to my mom about this before. So I just decided as a kid, like, I have to stop doing that. Like, I don't feel connected anymore. Like, I felt haunted is the best way to put it. And I didn't even know what that word meant yet. I didn't know ghost stories yet. I just knew I felt like there were these things around me that were just like pushing fucking negativity onto me all the time that really, really freaked me out. And it had a really negative impact on me.
I'm just like thinking now, like, how do you tell your kids not to do that? How do you
they have to tell you they're doing it. That's the thing. And I didn't. I was like, I'm not fucking telling anyone. This is the first fucking time I've ever told this to anyone besides you in that car ride. So I made the decision, like, don't do it. If you hear anything, just like hum in your head or just like imagine feedback as loud as you can in your ears. I still do this. And imagine feedback as loud as you can in your ears. Like, if I'm just, you know, like spinning for the day, like I have a million things going on, I'm freaking out. I like close my eyes and I imagine feedback. And it like calms me down. I still do this to this day. And I would do that enough where I would fall asleep because I was just so fucking tired. And slowly but surely, it stopped. This shit just stopped. It just went away. And this is why I forgot, because I was still a kid. When I was around 7, like right before I turned 7, I think, we moved to the house I grew up in Valparaiso, Indiana. When we got there, nothing really creepy happened. I remember remembering it being creepy. I got my own room when I was 7, and I was really nervous to not sleep with, you know, someone near me for like protection, but I was okay. And this stuff did not happen there, like, at all. And it's kind of funny because, you know, looking back on it, I realize now 100%, like, since I've like connected all these dots and really recovered these like horrible memories, that this is why I hate people like Zach Bagels so much.
Who like fake everything.
And fakes in general. It's like, you're full of shit. Like, you have no idea what something like that would actually be like. You're exploiting it for profit. And it makes me fucking sick to see. Like, it really, really, really does. And that's why I get so, like, viscerally angry about people that are full of shit. And it drives me fucking nuts. Like, they're attention-seeking assholes. And, like, this shit's, like, scary. Like, just talking about this, guys, is freaking me the fuck out.
I'm kind of freaked out because I don't want our kids to, like, worry about that.
We've been doing this show for 6 years. I've considered talking about this whole time. And, like, this is the first time I've been like, fuck it. Like, I'm okay. I can talk about this. And the next couple parts are where it's going to get way harder for me to talk about this. So I shut this shit down. I started feeling less foggy. I started settling into, like, my sense of humor and, like, the personality I would develop. And, like, basically, I kind of became me. I became who I am, which is funny because I always used to say, like, why am I me? And I just sort of became who I am once I finally stopped freaking out and, like, hearing this shit. And I forgot all about it. I would say I didn't remember I used to do this until I was probably, like, right before I moved away, right before I moved to Vegas. I talked about this with one of my friends, like, I remember I used to have some nightmares or something like that. I remember being drunk in Joe's fucking garage talking about this, and this part came flooding back to me. I was like, man, I forgot all about this. Like, I forgot about all of it. And then I didn't think about it anymore because when I remembered, I was like, I'm not sure I want to remember that shit.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
So the other thing that triggered me...
It makes me think of that movie. It makes me think of that Insidious movie because the kid astral projects and that's what causes all the issues. And
then he finds out the dad used to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, spoiler alert for a 15-year-old movie. But yeah, so I understand why that, like, parallels it. So... I settle into who I am. I'm feeling good, okay? Then when I'm around 16, this is probably, like, the best years I had. Like, I'm really, I have a good group of friends. I'm actually friends with my brother for the first time in a long time because we had a very antagonistic relationship for a very long time. And I don't talk about this that much. I've mentioned that my brother is schizophrenic. And I've mentioned how important mental health is to me. But I've never gone into this detail on our show, and I've only really done this with, like, people that are close to me. So here you guys go. Here it is. So when I was 16, I was on a road trip to Florida with my friends. We decided, like, for our senior year, between junior year and senior year, we're going to jump in the car. We're going to go down to Florida. We're going to spend a week down there. Just us. But, like, the way we kind of got away with it was we were going to stay with our friend's grandma, who was awesome. Yaya was, like, just the coolest person.
I would have never been allowed to go on, like, practically cross-country road trip, you know.
Like, my parents were like, sure, we trust you, go. Because I was very honest with my parents. They knew I was very independent. Like, my friend John, like, it was his yaya, so they're like, yeah, you can go. We trust you. We were supposed to have 3 other guys come with us. One of them had to drop out. Tim couldn't make it. His parents were like, no, you can't go. And then I remember Nick and Lee, like, they had to work their parents, but like, hey, we're going. Like, Yaya's going to be there to supervise us. And we got to do this 4-person road trip, and it was super fun. While we were there, and I still, when I think of that road trip, I don't remember this all the time. My brother called me. We were playing Magic the Gathering in Yaya's house.
Okay.
We decided we're going to play this game. And my brother calls me and I answer it. I'm like, hey, bro, what's up? And he asks me this series of bizarre questions. And I think he's fucking with me. So I answer him and then, like, I realize, like, he's deadly serious. And I'm like, are you okay? He's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, dude, like, you sound weird. He's like, okay, Adam, I just don't think you're okay. And so I'm like, I really am, dude. I'm having a good time. Like, the vacation's been awesome. Like, I appreciate you calling me, but I'm okay. And I'm trying to get off the phone because it's getting awkward. And I'm feeling very uncomfortable. And so, you know, I tell him bye. I love him. I hang up. He calls me back like a minute later. He's like, we need to talk.
What?
I was like, you just called me. He's like, no, you called me and you told me you're not okay. I was like, no, you just called me.
Oh, this is like his
I was
first...
like, you just called me and you asked me all these questions and I detailed all of them. I was like, and I told you I'm fine. It's like, I didn't call you. He's like, I don't think so. I'm like, I'm telling you, like, look at your phone. You can see it was an outgoing call from your phone. It's like, all right, so just hang up and chill out. And I hung up on him. And a couple days later, maybe 1 day later, like, my dad calls me.
And about your brother.
About my brother. And he says, like, your brother's in the hospital. And I don't know why. I'm like, what the fuck? What's wrong? And he goes, like,
a motorcycle accident? Or this is after?
So I'll explain it. So,
okay.
The words my dad used were so poorly chosen. And he said, like, we're losing him. And then he hung up.
It's like
because he couldn't talk about it. He was too emotional. He had to hang up because he was going to cry. And that's what I'm in fucking Florida. All I know is that my brother's in the hospital. We're losing him. Click. It's all I fucking have. So I'm like calling everyone back. No one's answering their fucking phones. Finally, I get on the phone with my dad again. And I'm like, what do you mean we're losing him? What does that fucking mean? And he's like, well, he's losing it. And I'm like, what do you mean he's losing it? He's like, mentally. And I was like, okay, cool. And so like I talked to my mom a little bit. And basically what happens is while I'm on vacation when I was 16 years old, this is my brother's first schizophrenic break. Like he just disconnects from reality and he's fucking just gone. Like he can't separate reality from fiction. He can't remember his memories from someone else's memories. It was horrible. Like it's horrible.
It sounds horrible
to be around someone who has a psychotic break. And I'm in Florida, and
there's nothing you can say that'll
nothing I can do. And I remember the night before we were at a gas station buying snacks, and I was talking to them about something me and my brother had talked about, which is that the reason people get nervous feelings, because I used to get this a lot, and I forgot about what used to happen when I was a kid. I forgot doing the meditation thing. I used to sit around and think occasionally like something's wrong, and then when I'd say that, my parents knew because it would happen to me often enough. They would start calling people and be like, is everything okay? And I only had this happen a few times, but when it happened, like someone had a heart attack or someone had passed away, something awful had happened.
Yeah.
And I remember asking my brother, because I was like around that age where I really wanted to know why that happened to me. And he told me like he sincerely thinks because like people have brainwaves. Like brainwaves are just a thing. Like you have ambient brainwaves where you're sitting next to another person, like your brain is putting out a signal and you don't really pick it up. But that's why some people feel comfortable to you and you can sit there and be comfortable. And be silent because like you're used to them, like you're used to their presence, like everything about their body language and their body signature and everything that comes off of a human being is home to you. And if someone were hurt or sick or in an emergency situation,
you can feel the vibe.
They put out an emergency signal that they don't even know they're doing, the same way you tense up, the same way you don't control your adrenaline glands, like you just fucking put out everything in your body is just like, something's wrong, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why people who are really in tune with other people pick up on it regardless of how far away they are. They can just feel it. Like you literally feel it in a way we can't quantify yet.
Okay.
This is the shit my brother's talking to me about when he's 20 and I'm 16. I was telling my friends this the night before I got that fucking phone call. I was just like...
You were talking to them about that.
Because I had that feeling that night. I was like, something's wrong back home. And this is why I think something's wrong back home. So the next day this happens, I get the phone call and my friends are freaked out. They don't know what to think. And I told them like, I really want to go home, but you guys have, I drove, it was my car.
Oh.
And I was like, I need to go home.
Did you
I can't be down here. No, I was just like, we can't afford it. Like none of us can afford it. Our parents can't afford to fly us back. And so we were just like, they're like, fuck it, let's just drive home. So we ended our vacation early.
How many days were you guys out there?
We were supposed to be there, I think, for 9 days total. We wound up staying for like 6.
Oh, that's not bad.
And everyone was super cool about it. Like to this day, like fucking love. I still talk to them all the time. Like John, Lee, Nick, all the time. Like they're still my 3 of like 5 closest friends that I have. And we got in the car, we drove home, and then I went through the nightmare of like seeing my brother in the mental institution and hearing the craziest shit you could ever imagine come out of a person's mouth. And, you know, he just slowly descended into madness. And like, he kept having breaks. He kept having these bizarre thoughts. He kept saying these crazy things. It became more antagonistic. And it's very, very difficult to deal with because you have to separate the person you love from the disease they have. And you have to realize, like, I'm mad at the disease because, like, what he's saying isn't something Vince would actually say. You know, it's that's a whole different thing, and that's a whole different trauma. That's like, that's something I think I'm more built to handle because I've dealt with it very consistently since that phone call. Like, I'm 38. The majority of my life, my brother's been a paranoid schizophrenic who's on some sort of like difficult time period.
Yeah.
So I didn't really think much about any of the other shit I talked about earlier while this was happening. All I thought about was like, how can I help? I need to be there. Even if he's going to be crazy, I need to be there. So that was what I did. In college, the end of high school and college, I was always like, you know, we're going to hang out, even though it's like really hard to see him like this. You can hang out with him all the time. So he's not alone. I didn't want him to be alone. I was really worried if he's alone, it could be worse. So then after years, man, and I mean like probably close to a decade, he does some crazy shit. I think he like wrecked a car on the freeway, and they were just like, this dude's batshit crazy.
Is that the one where he's like, they were chasing me or someone?
He thought like he was reading people's thoughts and people were trying to kill him, like schizophrenic shit. And he winds up getting a long-term commitment. And for anyone who's not familiar with this, like if you ever see a TV show or a movie where they're like, we're going to have this person committed because we're going to tell someone they're crazy, that is the biggest load of shit that exists in fiction, because you can't do that. The difficulty putting someone who desperately needs help into the hospital is probably the most difficult thing in this country. And for a person who desperately needs a long-term commitment, you will wait close to a decade for them to even have a bed for them to stay at a facility where they can get treatment. And while they wait, they're just fucking crazy, and you just cross their fingers and hope that they're not going to hurt anyone else or themselves. And that's the hell my family's lived in since I was 16. So he finally gets into a long-term facility after a decade. They give him the right drugs. He's in there for long enough where it's like him getting out of that, it was like seeing my brother for the first time in a decade. I was like, holy shit. Like he's still, dealing with it, but it's him again. And so there was a day where I was like, it's been long enough. I think it was like a few months after he had recovered, where I was like, I want to talk to him about what that's like, because I want to know what the last 10 years have been like for him. So this is going to get really creepy, and I'm just going to put that out there up front because it's very real. So I asked him, what's it like when, you're going on a rant? Like when we used to argue, when you used to say crazy things and I'd try and argue with you with reality, I was like, what's that like from your perspective? And he said, it's like I can hear you and I know what I want to say back. And I want to say, you're right. I know you're right. And then something else comes out of my mouth. And it's like being a prisoner kind of in your own body.
Yeah.
Where like, the words that are coming out of the mouth are coming from you, but it's just not what you want to say. So it just like...
It's like you have no control.
Him saying that made me feel like he had been trapped for that long. And I was just like, God, that sounds horrible. And the other question I asked him, and this is the question that ties everything together, which is just gonna stick with me for the rest of my life.
Like, when did it start?
And I hope it sticks with you, just because it'll make me feel better that I shared this misery, was when did it start? 100%. It was when did it start? When did this start?
And he meditated?
So, around that same time, where, I'd say it's probably like a year and a half before that, actually. A year and a half before my vacation, my brother got into a motorcycle accident. He had a helmet on. His head went through the windshield and he got like slingshot off the car. So he went like 20 feet in the air and then came down. He went to the hospital. He got checked out. He was fine physically. He was okay. But there's this thing that happens with people when they get into motorcycle accidents, regardless of whether or not they're wearing helmets.
It's like brain swelling.
They get brain swelling that eventually leads to brain damage. It's what happened to Gary Busey. Gary Busey is a very famous case where he was a fairly normal dude who had a motorcycle accident. And then around 18 months after it happens, it's like,
shit crazy.
Boom. It's like you snap and you just can't come back from it. It's like Vince's break was almost 18 months to the day after his accident. And he knew there was something wrong. And when I asked him, what did you do? Like, were you talking to anyone? He said, no, I was trying to meditate. And I said, okay, cool. Like, so you were meditating because you felt off. And he was like, I just felt... He didn't say foggy, but the way he described it to me really freaked me out.
Because it's like you were feeling that when you were a kid?
Okay, like I understand what you're saying right now. And I said, so when did like the intrusive thoughts happen? Because when you're schizophrenic, like you basically hear thoughts that aren't yours.
Did he talk?
And he said that he was meditating. He had been meditating for a while. And I do remember the period when he was meditating a bunch. And he said he was meditating really deeply. And he asked a question if anything was there.
Oh.
And the first voice he ever heard in his head, the first intrusive thought was the word yes. Something answered him.
That's scary.
And that is when his schizophrenia started. I am well aware that my brother's schizophrenia is almost completely certainly related to the fact that he had a car crash.
Yeah,
and
brain injuries tend to do that. Yeah.
Of what he said to me is just that. It's a horrible, vicious, haunting coincidence. But since then, I have always been horrified at the prospect that he's not really schizophrenic.
That
and
he's like possessed.
He's haunted. And I don't like to use possessed because I don't think that really applies in a lot of the same ways possessions apply.
It just seems like, the fact that he felt like he was trapped in his own body and something else was controlling his body.
That sounds very much like possession.
Yeah.
But possessions versus schizophrenia is something I've studied very extensively. It's why I've always covered possessions the way I do when I cover those topics.
Okay.
Because there's difference. That's why the true story of the exorcism scares me so much, is because that kid was not schizophrenic. Like, when you're getting an exorcism, it's almost always because you're exhibiting schizophrenic symptoms and your family's very religious. That is not what happened with that fucking kid. He was not schizophrenic. My brother is schizophrenic. Like, he is definitely diagnosed schizophrenic. That's just how it is. But knowing what I went through as a kid and hearing what he went through when that shit popped off was enough to scare me to my core for the rest of my life. And it always will be. And it's like, I've always been scared to even mention this to people because for two reasons, two very specific reasons. I do not want my brother to hear that and decide he does not want to participate in treatment for his schizophrenia because he wants to take a religious approach instead. That terrifies me.
Yeah.
And the second is that I don't want anyone to use it against my brother because they heard me say it and decided that they would somehow use it to mess with him. That fear has sort of went away a little bit because I don't think anyone would really do that. But I did worry about that a lot when I first thought of it. So this is my story. This is what I went through as a kid, what happened to my brother. And for a very long time, like once my brother had his first psychotic break, I used to say like he was this years old. I used to figure out like he was this many years, months, and days old when it happened to him. Because I was so
are you just waiting for it to happen to you?
It would happen to me. And after like I got past like the 10th milestone, I was like, it's not going to happen to me. I'm not schizophrenic. Like, that's just not something that happens. Like, late in life schizophrenia does happen. I sincerely don't think my brother would be schizophrenic if that motorcycle accident wouldn't have happened. I don't think it has anything to do with meditation, but the possibility and the fact that even though I'm an incredibly skeptic person, that I can't say with a certainty, like, it's not the case. The meditation thing is not the case. And knowing what happened to me when I was a kid, it is horrifying to me. It is the scariest fucking thing in my life, without a doubt.
I mean, I see so many things about meditation everywhere. There's meditation apps, and people are always just like, oh, you should meditate. It's calming, it's good for you, or whatnot. And I'm just like, I don't want to, because that's my fear, is that there's something out there, and it's just waiting for a way to get in. And by emptying everything else out,
you're
that's
a
in
vessel
your mind,
that's been emptied out.
Yeah.
You don't have the distractions of the everyday world, which keep you blind to stuff that, you should probably pay attention to, and to the things that you should absolutely never notice.
I'm like, give me that baseball, give me that F1,
right?
fill my feed.
Seriously. So I'm going to finish this off with 3 thoughts, which are probably going to take way too long, and I apologize, but I am still and probably will forever be 100% committed to staying shut off. I have considered it every now and then, like, I wonder if I still could. I don't want to, and I'm not going to try, but I've just wondered, like, if it was just me being a kid, if I tried again, nothing would happen. And I was like, well, then just decide that's the case and move the fuck on.
Yeah, just move on. Don't think about it.
I'm like committed to staying powered down on that front. So the second to last thing I want to mention is my nightmares. So I had the recurring nightmares even after I shut the thing down because I felt like that doorway was, oh my God, I just totally made another connection. This is why I didn't want to write my script down. So my recurring nightmare was Freddy Krueger. My brother and I would be playing in the basement of the house this all started in. And I would just know Freddy Krueger was going to show up. And we would run up the stairs. It was a tri-level. So we would run up the stairs. You'd do a 180 and there was another staircase right there in the next room. And we'd run up the other stairs. And the second staircase would turn to mush and my feet would get stuck because that's a scene from the fucking movie.
Yeah.
And my brother would run and hide. And I would hear him coming up the stairs. Like I'd hear the footsteps. And as soon as I felt something grab me, that's when I'd wake up screaming. Every fucking night. The night that nightmare stopped, my brother ran away initially, stopped, and came back for me. And he grabbed me, and he pulled me out of the stairs. We ran to my parents' bedroom, and in classic fashion, we hid under the blanket. Like my parents' big blanket that could cover us up because we were tiny kids, and they had this huge king-size blanket. And we could see his fucking knives trying to stab through, and they couldn't get through the blanket.
Oh, wow.
And we stayed under there.
That seems like such a kid thing,
Yeah, we stayed under there until I woke up. I never had that nightmare again. I never have.
Did you
It's
guys
been 30 years.
Did you guys ever have like that conversation of like, do you have this dream? And then maybe you guys have like
I
the same
definitely
dream.
told him that I had that nightmare, and he's like, he's never had that before.
Okay.
It's just the connection I made is he's the one who saved me, which is just another weird family brotherly connection. So I've dreamt of Freddy since I was a kid, since this has stopped, but it's never been in that same scenario. And it's become less haunting the older I've gotten. I've been able to figure out a way to get out of my nightmares. I've talked about this before, where I clench my eyes shut real tight, and then when I open my eyes, I'm awake. And that's always worked. And then I started confronting him more as I got older. Like by the time I was in college, I would just be like, I'm not fucking running away. Like, fuck this. And so he stopped showing up. So I still have nightmares. No, normally my nightmares nowadays are like normal people nightmares, where it's like something bad happens in my life, or something happens with my family, or Robin's a whore, or whatever.
What the fuck? That's true.
These are nightmares that I have. These are
Yeah.
the normal nightmares. On occasion, I would say once every year or two at most, I have a nightmare where it could be in my old house, it could be, wherever, but something just shows up. It doesn't matter what's happening, something's there.
I think you've talked about this dream on the podcast
I've
before.
talked about this part before, and when something's there, I don't see anything. It's always invisible, but I know it's evil. It's like, if there's a demon like that haunts my dreams, I know it's him. Like if he's been using the face of all these other things to haunt me in my nightmares, there are dreams I have where it's just the presence there. And no matter what I do, I know it's him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like if he had a name, I would say, these are the dreams where I know this thing is there. I just think of it as like, it's here. That's what I think in my nightmares, and I know that thing
like
that haunts me is here right now.
Like the poltergeist, where she's just like, they're here.
It's horrible, because like even at my like best, and I will confront it, I think I've like successfully been able to confront it and not been completely overwhelmed with just like being thrown around like a rag doll.
Oh, okay.
Like being just like the worst ways you could ever imagine, like a horror movie where someone dies, like everything that would happen to them, except I don't die. And like I've had, I think twice in my life where this thing has showed up in my head and I've been able to confront it and then like move on, and it went away. Where I felt like, okay, I'm strong. Like I fought it back, but I still have the fear during the dream, like, man, I hope it doesn't fucking come back. And that thing to me, I don't have a name for it, but like that to me is what's always been with me since I was a kid. So when it shows up in my nightmares, I think like it's here, and it freaks me the fuck out. But I don't want to end this on a really, really scary note. There's something I've kind of come to realize as just what's worked for me in my life. The older I've gotten is that there's a lot of things that have happened like this that are really, really scary, And I think if you dwell on stuff like that, or if you think about it too much, you will let stuff like that in. And this is a stupid story, but it's totally true. When I was a kid, we busted a Ouija board one night and we were playing around with it at my friend's house. I think I've told this story on the podcast before too. And we were just fucking around, like making up stupid, like raunchy things to type out or whatever with the planchette. And we're listening to Q101 in the background, which is a radio station in the Chicagoland area. And it's like the best signal, you can just hear it loud and clear. And we were just like, everyone don't fuck around. Just for this one, don't fuck around. And we were at my friend's house and we said, is there anything here with us? And it went to yes. And we're all immediately thinking like someone's moving it to yes. But as soon as the planchette was over yes, the radio went to straight static. Just
that's horrifying.
When that happened, everyone stopped joking around. I got up and I turned off the radio. And then I took the planchette and I poked the eye out of it. And then we closed the box up and we sat back. And we were all really freaked out.
Did you guys say goodbye?
No.
Oh my God.
My friend Lucas, at this point, he used to wear like a crystal around his neck. And Lucas, he had some ideas of like energy and crystals and stuff like that I think some people get into that I didn't really get into. But he like held the crystal in his hands. It was like kind of like he was praying, but he was really just meditating. And he was like, that was really fucking creepy. Like afterwards, he was like, that was really creepy, but I think we're fine now. And I was like, okay, cool. He says we're fine now. And I brought that up to him years later. And I asked him if anything like that has ever happened again. And what he told me is that I've come to realize that my energy is strong enough to drive out all the evil things. And
that's cool.
He's a really practical person. Like he is not religious in any way, shape, or form. But I remember him saying that. And the more I've grown, the more I've realized that he's 100% right. And it's like, I think it's a Martin Luther King quote, like, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
Oh, that's cool.
So like when we lived at the house in Vegas, I used to always say, because we used to be like kind of creeped out here and there because it was new. I was like, there's too much love in this house for something evil to get in. Like, and I really felt that way because like we had such great moments. Like even when really hard things would happen in our lives, like that was the place people would go to be happy, you know?
Yeah.
Like that was the landing spot for us to be together. And I think that energy, like I try to carry that with me everywhere I go now, which is why I don't like talking about this particular topic, because it really is something that still haunts me. Like it really fucking creeps me out to think about. So I figured I'd bring it up, just do it start to finish, get it all off my chest. I don't really want to talk about it. So if people want to reach out and tell me like what they thought of the episode, like that's totally fine. If I'm brief or short in my response, it's because I'm like checking this box and I'm going to move forward, and it's not really something I want to dwell on or explore any further. So that is my haunted story.
Thank you for the trauma dump.
You're welcome. So yeah, it's not exactly a full trauma dump, but it's like, here's some scary shit that happened mixed with some trauma that happened mixed with some more scary shit that happened. So yeah, obviously I couldn't put that into an email because it would be like 20 pages long. But yeah, so that's my topic. I hope you all enjoyed it. Probably not. But
they don't even remember my beginning of this episode. So.
Haunted Tunnels was really fun. I almost feel like we should have closed with it because it would have been like more uplifting.
Yeah.
But this is the order we chose to go in. So yeah, that's everything we have for episode 275. If you guys have any stories you would like to share with us, does not have to be about anything we talked about tonight. Feel free to email us at storytime@scaryish.com. You can also go to scaryish.com, click on contact us, fill out that form. It comes directly to us, or hit us up on our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scariyishpodcast. Twitter/X is...
It's not called X anymore. There's no way.
Scaryish, I don't remember how they work. @ScariyishPod, and then Instagram is @ScariyishPodcast.
Send Adam some happy emojis.
Sure.
I don't know what emojis make you happy. I always like I don't know, food ones. Those are mine. I'll
take whatever I can get. But Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can always go to Coffee. You can always go to Patreon, patreon.com/scaryish podcast. Those are monthly donations with tiers starting at $1. You can also go to Coffee, ko-fi.com/scaryish podcast. I guess it could have gone first, but changing it up is confusing for me, and I like to do it the right way. But yeah, all your donations go to helping us keep everything going.
Keep the trains moving.
Yeah. Through the tunnels.
Wow. Creepy. Yeah, that's everything we got for this episode. I think we're all ready to let it end. So Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, but not so creepy that bad things happen. Talk to you guys next week.